Welcome to my channel. In this video we are going to learn what is a Git and Git understanding and what is the Git workflow. That is the first concept in this Git series. Git is a version control system. This is a distributed version control system. We have two different version control systems, centralized and distributed. Git is a distributed version control system. I'll come up with the differences between centralized and a distributed version control system in the upcoming videos once we understand the Git concept. Now let's try to understand what is Git. Git is a open source version control system which tracks your files or directory or a folders whenever you update that particular file or a folder. Which basically tracks your files with the versioning. Let's understand what is meant by versioning and what it tracks. Let's assume we have one file. In this particular file, I have a content. This is my file. Assume this is my version 1. Now I am going to edit this file. And I am updating the text inside the file is. This is my file, first update. Okay, this particular content I have updated here. And again I am going to update the file. Here I am going to keep the content as second update. Okay, now this particular text file, assume this is a text file. Each time you are updating something, this content is being edited. Usually if you are editing on a file, the base file will be always updated. And so once after you update from this is my file version 1 to a version 2, assume this is your version 2, this is your version 3. If you are keep updating the base file, you will not be knowing what was your first edit and what was your second edit. And so to keep track all these with the versioning, like let's say the version 1 has this is my file, and when you edit that, keeping the version 1 and then updating it to a version 2, giving it as a name version 2, and this is my file first update. And in this way you can have n number of edits on the file, but each state of the specific file is given as a version. So that would be like a version 1.0 or 1.1 or 1.2, or it follows like some specific number. It gives like a unique version number for that particular file. Git will be helping you to track all these changes by providing the version number, and Git is a distributed version control system. Now let's see what is a Git workflow, how Git works. Git works in like let's say we have one remote repository. Assume this is the remote repository, and where you have your code. Remote. Okay, this is your remote repository where you have your code here. This might be a GitHub or a Bitbucket. I'll talk about a GitHub or Bitbucket little later after this video. And assume this is your GitHub, and where you have your remote repository. And now if you want to work on this specific repository, you need to clone the project first. Clone in the sense you are going to get the complete copy of your repository with the previous commits and the branches and everything with the history. Everything will be cloned into your local space, which means the same copy you are going to get into your local, which is this is a local repository. Once you have in the copy of the remote repository in your local, where you have the Git is initialized, I have a Git here. Okay, let me separate it with, this is your local and this is your remote. From the remote you clone into your local repository, and from once you have the repository is being cloned into your local machine, which means like your physical machine hardware, you are going to check out. What you do when you do a checkout, you will get a working copy. Assume this is your working copy. This is your working copy where you will do all your updates, and you are going to edit your files in this working copy. And once after you done the the edits required in the specific file, you need to commit into your local repository. What you do, you are going to commit it here. Okay, here it is a commit. You are doing a commit, but here you are actually to get a working copy, you are doing a checkout. Let me, this is a checkout here. Okay, you are doing a checkout and then you are committing it to your local repository. And here this is a cloning you have done here. This is nothing but a, and now once you have committed your local changes into your local repository from the working copy to a local repository, you need to push that to a remote repository. Until then, whatever the changes you have made here and committed to your local repository, it will be available only in your local. They will not be on the remote repository. You cannot see until you push the changes from local repository to a remote repository. What you need to do is you need to, here you need to pull, sorry, you need to push. See, this is the Git workflow, but when you are doing a checkout, I wanted to put one more state here called indexing or index or staging. Let me draw that here. When you do a checkout, there would be indexing will be there, the stage that is called a stage. And once you have updated your files, like in the working copy have made some changes, you need to add them to a stage first, and then you will be doing a commit. Let me give the name called a stage index. See, this is a stage or index. First, once you're done with your updates, we need to add them to an index and then we need to commit. Let me, okay. See, keep the add here. So you are adding files to a stage and then you are committing. So this is the Git workflow. I'll summarize this Git workflow. I have a remote repository, and from the remote repository you are going to clone into your local machine. So this is where your Git is installed. Okay, this is where you have a Git. So this Git will be keep tracking on the files in this repository and from the working copy. So if you edit anything on this working copy, the Git will be keep tracking what are the files are updated, and so you can add them to a stage to track the files. Until you add them to a stage, those files are untracked files. Once you add them, they are tracked files, and then you do a commit by providing a proper message, the commit message, what you are updating and what is the purpose of this change, and you can push it to a local you can commit to a local repository. From there you push it to a remote, only then this remote repository will be updated. Without doing this push and just committing doesn't update your remote repository, because that particular commit makes changes into your local repository. And there is a one advantage in this is this is a distributed version control system, as I mentioned earlier. And if you are working in a team with a group of people, everyone can clone the remote repository into a local copy, and then they would be able to do their changes and their own piece, like what exactly they are actually working. Instead of like directly working on the remote, they can have the local copy and they can work on their own piece of a code, and their local git will be keep tracking until they push it to a remote. In this scenario, while cloning the project and pushing the local copy to a remote repository, you need an internet. You should be in an online because you are interacting with the remote server. But once you clone the project, get all the history, branches, and uh, everything from the remote repository to a local repository, you need not to be having an online to work on your local copy, because you have your git installed in your local machine and you have the complete copy of the source code or the project, the repository code. So you are always free to work on your local machine without having an internet connection also. That is a advantage in the git. And this is a distributed version control system. Hope you understand the concept of what is a git and what is the workflow of the git. And this is a distributed version control system. And if you have any questions, please feel free to comment in the comment section. Thanks for watching.